Well, good morning. It sure is good to see all of you that are here and all of you that are joining us online. So we're in this series about just a different kind of church. And so as we kind of talk about being a different kind of church and what makes a church different, I want you to think about the different ways that people think about life itself, the different perspectives. In fact, I want to talk about two perspectives in particular that we often run up against in religion or in church, and there can be this kind of tug of war between them. On one side, there's kind of this view that views life in a very positive way, and like overtly positive. Like everything is good, everything needs to be good, because if God is good, then life has got to be good. And you feel the tug that you need to be this way and everything needs to be this way. There's one lady that I know, and we've had discussions going on now for years about this. And she has this very positive way of taking it. She will often quote Jesus in this, and she goes, listen, Jesus said, take heart because I've overcome the world. And so if I've overcome the world, everything that you face, like it's all good. But she takes it to this place where if anything, if there's a ruffle in anything or something gets difficult, like she doesn't like that because it doesn't fit this kind of view she's got. I kind of have fun with it every once in a while. I'll see her, and if she has like a cold or something, I'm like, so like, are you sick? Oh no, I'm not sick at all. It's fine. Like Jesus has overcome the world. And so it's like, and she actually takes it to this place where troubling things trouble her because it's like, no, it all needs to be this way. But it goes to this place that I can't go to, right? So like she had a grandson that needed to have surgery. And she felt like, no, like if we just pray about this, if we have faith, he won't need to have surgery. But what she didn't realize she was doing in that moment is what she was saying is to her grandson, there's not space for you, right? Like if you don't pray about, if you end up having surgery, then somehow like, right, you didn't match this view. And I can, she's always trying to pull me to this thing, like you're really centered in Jesus. And I'm like, you know what? I can't go there because I feel like it's not real, right? Because so for me, and I'm a very positive guy, right? Like I'm the glass is half full kind of guy. But you know what? There's still moments in life where things are difficult. I still have moments in life where it's a struggle, and it's just like, if you keep pulling me into this, I can't go there because it doesn't match real life for me. I can't go there in that. And I'm sure some of you have felt that in different ways with being pulled in that direction. And sometimes it just feels like it's using faith to avoid hard things. And I don't want my faith to be used just to avoid hard things. Now, this tug of war though, there are times when we feel the tug on the other side because, right, there'll be times there's this view that looks at life and it says, listen, we actually absolutely need to acknowledge that there is suffering in life and that there is sin. And as human beings, we have a sin nature and all these struggles and all of these problems. And it wants to embrace a view of life that just like holds on to this. For a long time, there was one guy that was here at the church and just clamped onto this view, and there was probably a good 3-month period where he kept trying to pull me into this. Like it was almost after every single message he'd come back and he says, listen, you've got to tell them more about like this is what sin does, and they need to know that there are people that are trying to tempt them with these things and this, because he had this view, right, that everything out there in the world, in life, is bad, right? It's a world that is depraved and fallen. And so he kind of took on this thing that if it's not of God, then it is against us. We're at war with the world is what he would literally tell me, right? We're at war with the world, and and if you're not with God, then like you're against God. And if you're like, and it's just like, man, you keep talking about this world out there that we have to fight. Like, and when he would pull me into this, I felt like a army recruiter was pulling me into this thing. But I always just remember feeling like I hear you using words about the world out there. But that world out there is made up of some people that I really care about. And I'm not fighting them. And I sure don't see God at war with them. I can't go with you to this place because this doesn't seem real either. And so there's this kind of tug of war between views of how do you view life? And I'm sure some of you have felt that tug of war at times. You have felt that pull. And maybe you felt it because there was someone that was saying things and you're like, wow, okay, I hear what you're saying there. You're quoting a Bible verse or you're talking about something you saw. And you feel that tug, but I bet at other times you've also, you felt this thing where it's like, there's something about it that just doesn't line up with reality. Don't ask me to pretend that something is a way that it's not. And don't ask me to just see the whole world and everyone who isn't with me in a one-dimensional way that now I must control or fight or be against. See? And we've probably all had moments where we felt that the tug of war on this. And when I think about what's happening with so many people that are leaving churches today, I think there's a part of it that is this. Not all of it, but I think there's an element of this that is true. Because when you're in a religion that has no room for the truth of you, you either find yourself having to fake it or you have to leave. If you're in a religion or a church that keeps trying to say, you have to come over here, and you're like, but my life has some complexity to it. You end up having to make this choice about will I fake it or am I going to get pushed out? And the same thing happens on this side. That is, you feel that tug of war and church or religion starts pulling you to have this attitude towards the world and this fight and control thing. And it's like, but I think the world is more nuanced than this. The world isn't one-dimensional. There's people that are struggling and trying to figure this out, and I see goodness in the world, and I see the bad. But you're making it all bad, and you're turning me against something that in my heart, I feel like Jesus is asking me to be for, to minister to. And yet, there's this tug of war that just wants to pull us in one of these two directions. And I think what we need more of are churches that find this way that allow people the space to be human, to actually go through some struggles, to have the space to struggle when things are difficult, and to have space to have the struggle when it feels like things are going wrong, and not to ignore when things are bad or difficult in this. And here's the beautiful thing about all this, is that when we begin to look at Jesus and his life, he models, I think, a way of actually standing in the tension of that tug of war. That Jesus is someone that was always finding space for people to be real. And I want to walk through one story, and I'm not even going to walk through the whole story. There's an element of this story that I want you to see. I was actually going to go through 2 or 3 stories and then realize there's not enough time for that. And then it's so I'll go through part of one story, and then we'll get out on time, or close to on time on this. This story is found in the Gospel of John in chapter 4. So if you want to follow along in your Bibles, you're more than welcome. We'll start near the beginning of John here in a minute. If not, we'll put the verses on the screen and you can read them there. But this story is going to primarily take place in a region called Samaria. In fact, a sub-region of that around this area that was known as Jacob's Well or Shechem. And the other thing to know is the story doesn't start there. The story actually starts down in Judea, which would have been south of there, close to Jerusalem, when Jesus simply makes this comment that it's like they're going to travel back up to Galilee. But this area that the story we're going to look at is like halfway between Galilee and Judea, where he starts off. And the story starts off, and there's this one strange statement that I want to point out. And we'll come back to it, but I want to point it out and just acknowledge something here before we move on. So look with me in John chapter 4 and starting in verse 3. So it says, and this is speaking of Jesus, so he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. So he's going to go from the south all the way up into the north. Then it says, verse 4, now he had to go through Samaria. Now, that's a little bit of a strange statement. If you look at it on a map, you might very quickly go, oh, I see what he's saying, because Samaria is in the middle, kind of up against the Jordan River. And so if you're going to go from down around Jerusalem up there, you would have to travel through Samaria. But that's not actually true. So we want to pay attention to like what John is saying when he says this. The Jews and the Samaritans, it's hard to get our minds around how deep the disdain was that they had for one another. It was religious, it was ethnic, it was cultural, it was deep. And they shared a lot of heritage. The Samaritans were Jewish, or at least part Jewish. They both used the Torah, but you go back a few centuries and everything goes different ways, and it goes sideways. And so the depth of their disdain for one another was that when Jews would travel this area, when they would leave the area of Judea, before they got to Samaria, they would actually cross over the Jordan River on the east side and then travel the length of the Jordan River so that they weren't in Samaria, so that they didn't have to come across any Samaritans. Then when they got north of Samaria, then they would cross back over the Jordan River and then go around over to Galilee and some of the other areas. That was normal. That was the regular path. In fact, probably in Jesus' day, very, very few Jews ever just simply traveled through Samaria because it was the shortest route. They would go around it. So when John says here, now he had to go through Samaria, something's going on here. And it's not because he physically had to do that, because that was the route. What John is getting at is there's something compelling Jesus. There was a reason in his heart that he does that. And you'll see what this is as this begins to unfold. Well, I promise we'll come back to this. So they start off, right? Look back with me at verse 5 here, and we watch how the story begins to unfold. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given his son Joseph. And this whole area was known as Shechem. Verse 6, Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well, and it was about noon. So this is in the middle of the day. This is normally when people would not be going out for water, and he sits down next to this very famous well that would have been centuries old, that Jacob, one of the patriarchs of Judaism, right, dug this well right here. And it is right at the base of this Mount Gerizim. That once had a Samaritan temple up on top of it. And this was one of the things that drove the Jews and the Samaritans apart, was because at one point the Samaritans built a temple because they believed, when they looked back at the book of Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, this was a mountain that they were supposed to have a temple on. And the Jews were like, no, that is like an abomination, right? So there's so much history in this moment. Okay, and here's Jesus sitting at this well, and look what happens. Look at verse 7. So he sits down about noon, verse 7. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? You just got to picture this moment, right? Here's a Samaritan woman in the middle of the day. This is not when people normally came to get water. She is coming by herself. She probably wants to be by herself. I want you to just imagine for a moment maybe what could have been going through her mind. Like, you think when she went to go get water that day, she was just like, boy, I hope I run into some people. Like, I don't know, a Jewish man A Jewish man that's a rabbi. That'd be great, right? And of course, when she walks up, there would have been enough distinctions between the dress of Samaritans and Jews. She probably would have picked up very quickly, and even haircut very quickly, that this was a Jewish man. And I think for sure that he was a rabbi. There would have been certain features that Jesus would have worn as a rabbi, little tassels and stuff that would have been a key. And just picture for a moment this woman, and she's walking up to the well, and she's like, really? Like, of all the days, like, why is he here? What is he gonna say? What is he gonna do, right? And of course, he's gonna just pipe right up, right? She, it's right there. Will you get me a drink, right? And there's a part of this where I think when we look at this story, it can be easy to miss, but I think it is there. This woman has a kind of boldness to her that I have really come to like in this. And I think she's reading the situation here, right? Because she, some Jewish rabbi didn't just show up at this well. And this is like in the middle southern part of Samaria. Like, you don't just accidentally veer into this area. Like, they walked a while in Samaria to get here. And he came all the way here so that I could get him a drink of water? Like, what's really going on in this moment? And here's her boldness. She kind of calls him out on this. She really does. Look at verse 9. I love how she responds to this. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman." And I love this next line. "How can you ask me for a drink?" What's really going on in this moment? And I love John. This is John's notation he puts in there, just for anybody who wasn't Jewish and didn't know this was going on. For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Man, is that an understatement, right? Like, you can just picture it going, how can you ask me for a drink? Like, I'm the one. When you look at the world, when you look at life, you look at me and say, those are the ones that we're against. Those are the ones that we fight against, right? That's who you are. And you're asking me for a drink in this moment? I think there's part of her that is actually saying, like, what are you really up to in this moment? I remember when I was in high school, I had this great moment where some buddies of mine, there's like 4 or 5 of us, and it was late on a Friday night, which, right, you just know this story's not gonna go to a good place, because Glenn was in high school and late on a Friday night, and he was with some of his buddies, and I'll put it this way, we wanted to decorate our youth pastor's home that night, just help him out a little bit. So we went by the grocery store, and I think it was a Lucky's. If any of you have been around here that long, I think it was a Lucky's grocery store over on maybe Ina and Thornydale. And so we go in there late at night, right before they're getting ready to close or whatever. And we go to check out, and as we're trying to check out, and we're all like, trying to come up with enough change or money to, buy our goods. And the cashier was like, so what are you boys up to tonight? And we were like, what do you mean? And we looked down and we're like, oh yeah. There was these 2 big bundles of toilet paper and 10 cans of Barbasol shaving cream. And our face, between the 5 of us, we didn't need to shave but once a month, right? And then and I'll never forget what she goes. She goes, helping your mom with the grocery list, are you? Right? It's just I know you're up to something, and it's not what you just said, right? And that's this woman. I think she's get you a drink. Right, yeah, you walked Mr. Rabbi, you came all the way into the middle of Samaria so that a Samaritan woman could get you a drink of water. What's really going on, right? Think of this. As she's standing there saying, okay, this is about a drink of water. Right at this location, and you have to understand the history that has happened at this location. It is right at the foot of Mount Gerizim, which, remember I said when the Samaritans built that temple would have been right at the top of that hill. Right, Jesus and this woman could have looked up and have seen it. But what they would have seen in this moment was a pile of rubble. Because Somebody about a century and a half before this burned down and destroyed the Samaritan temple that they had there. Guess who it was? The Jews. Picture this Samaritan woman going, okay, is it lost on you? You're asking me for a drink of water, and you are a part of the group that did that. Like, of all the places you could ask me for a drink of water, you're gonna ask me for a drink of water at the foot of the mountain where you sent in an armed group of people, killed some of us, so that you could destroy our temple, and you want a drink of water. Like, why are you really here? And I love Jesus' response. It's kind of like, okay, yep, you're right. I'm here for something else. And Jesus responds in this moment. Look at what he says. Look at verse 10. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. You caught me, and I'm here to give you this gift. Now, the dialogue goes on, and it's fascinating. Like, she's kind of reluctant at first. Like, she's not going to buy this right away. And then Jesus goes on to talk about this, and he uses this metaphor of water to say, like, there's this gift, there's this thing that you need that I have. And she doesn't fully understand what he's talking about, because in using this metaphor about living water, it's kind of like, is this a spiritual thing or is this a physical thing? Because living water would have been like a spring or running water. And it's like, so do you know where there's another spring around here? Or do you know something I don't know, so that I don't have to come out to this well all of the time to get water? Like, and as she listens to Jesus in this dialogue between two of them, there's something enough in what Jesus is doing that she, without even fully understanding what it is, she agrees, okay, I'll take your gift. I'll take your gift. Which is a really pivotal moment, because now Jesus shifts and he makes a statement. He asks something of her that switches the whole tenor of what this conversation is about. And here's what Jesus says: go and get your husband. And she's like, okay, I'll take the gift. And he's like, great. Now go and get your husband. And when Jesus says this, I wish I could hear the tone of what she says next. I wish I could see the look on her face. Because for her, she knows what's going on, right? Because she isn't married. She doesn't have a husband. And her story is complicated, and her story is messy. And the moment he says, go get your husband, it puts her in a spot. What do I do in this moment? Right? Do I not get this gift if I don't bring my husband here? Right? If I don't tell you how complicated my life is in this moment? I wonder if there was a part of her that was like, I wonder if you know something about me that I don't know. And now here comes a moment of judgment, right? Was this all a buildup so that you could point out the messiness of my life? Because this is a woman, and she's not going to fit this view of life, because things are complicated. And when she thinks about this view of life over here, this is a view of life that has just got to be cruel to her, because every criticism, everything that would come out of this view of life would be pointed at her. She would be the enemy of the people that would hold this, and she would have no place with people that hold this view over here. But again, there is something bold about this woman, and she is going to just shoot so straight with Jesus in this moment. And I wonder if that is because she has lived in this place for a while. She has lived in that tug of war and the pain of it. You know, there are times when I meet people that have been through this, countless times, where there is someone that grew up in religion or in church, and there was and it was kind of this view. And there were all of the things. This is what a good Christian looks like. You need, I've talked with people, and they would describe a picture. You know, I grew up in a family, and we were the shiny example of what a Christian family should be until we weren't. And then when it kind of all breaks, it's like, you don't have a place here. And there's this kind of pain when all of a sudden it's like there's no room to be human. There's no room to go through the struggles of life when I don't match what this is. And suddenly you go from not belonging here to not only, and you think about this view over here, it's like all of a sudden I become the object of this group. What happened that I became the one that somehow they were against in this? Why am I the one receiving the darts and I'm just trying to go through life. And I see people that go through that at times, and sometimes through the pain of navigating that, there comes a point where they're like, I'm not gonna manage it anymore. You over here, I don't care if I break your picture anymore. Because I tried living up to it, and it's kind of plastic, and I don't like it. And you all over here, you can say whatever you want, right? But I'm not gonna have it. And I'm just gonna shoot straight. And I wonder, I don't know this for sure, but I wonder if that is the place that this woman was in, because here's how she responds. It is short and it is to the point. Look at what she says. Look at verse 17. She says this, I have no husband, right? Go get my husband? I'm not gonna play the game. I'm not gonna pretend. I have no husband. Where are you gonna go now with this? And then Jesus's response just plays off of this moment. And it's actually really beautiful. And I don't want you to miss this here, because he does something that we can read and just go, okay, what does he do? Is he calling something out? But watch what he does here. Look at verse 17 again. Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you have now, and the man you now have is not your husband. And then he says this one line. What you have said is quite true. That's what I'm reading out of the NIV. What you have said is quite true. Now, it's easy to miss this last line of what Jesus says, because it's hard to capture the meaning of going from the Greek into English. So my translation at the end there, it says quite true. The word quite is not in the Greek. There's no place in the Greek where that word exists there. The reason translators do that, and you all probably have something similar to that. The reason they do that is because even though what he says is what you have said is true, how this word true or truth is formed captures this other meaning that is hard to get in English grammar. It is technically in the Greek, it is the substantive adjective is what it is. It is a substantive adjective. And I had to look that up, so don't feel bad if you're like, well, yeah, I know what a substantive adjective is. I'm like, well, of course, right? No, it's not super common. But here's what a substantive adjective is. It's an adjective that stands as a noun. It works and acts like a noun, even though it's an adjective. And here's why that's significant in this. Because it's not just as an adjective just saying her statement was true. It stands as a noun. It is about her in a different way. Maybe a more clear way of understanding what Jesus says in this moment is, Jesus saying is what you have said is the truth of you, right? It stands as its own noun. This is the truth of you. Now think about that. This is a powerful statement. He says, you're right. You've had 5 husbands. And the man you're with now isn't your husband. What you have just said is the truth of you. Do you catch the subtlety of what Jesus has done? He has just made space for the truth of her. He's not pulled her into these other views. He said, this is the truth of you. It is the messy, difficult, complicated truth of you. And I don't want you to miss this either. In the first century, divorce was nothing like what it is today. And is there a chance that she was a widow? You bet. But 5 times? Probably not. Maybe not at all. But in the first century, divorce was a one-sided affair completely. Women had no right to even initiate a divorce proceeding or even a divorce request. They couldn't even make a request for a divorce. In fact, the closest thing, and this was true of Roman culture, Greek culture, and Jewish culture. And in the Jewish culture in the first century, the closest thing she would have had is if there would have been a group of men, a council from the synagogue, if they would have seen severe abuse or something that would have caused them to say, I think we need to explore this, they could initiate a proceeding for this. But catch this, at any point, the woman's husband was like, okay, I don't like where this is going. He could veto it and end that at any point, and she had no recourse on this. But the opposite was true for the husband. As difficult as it was for a wife to get a divorce, it was that easy for a husband to get a divorce. A husband could get a divorce with like no formal proceeding other than a simple written writ of divorce that he could write, as long as it was a legitimate reason. But legitimate reasons were so numerous, we'd be hard-pressed to even find all of the reasons. And a lot of these, we still have texts that list some of these reasons. Let me give you one from the first century. This is an actual justifiable reason for a husband to divorce his wife. If he finds any other woman that he would deem more attractive than his own wife, he had the right to divorce his wife. That's one example, okay? Basically, any man could divorce his wife and she had no recourse. There would be legal recourses that were financial. He would be obligated to give part or all of a dowry back or something like that. But if he wanted a divorce, there were plenty of easy reasons. She has none. So now I want you to think about this. The truth of you is, you've had 5 husbands. 5 times you've heard there's no place for you. 5 times she heard you're not good enough. 5 times she heard there's something wrong with you. 5 times you don't fit the image of what I want or need. 5 times she would have gone through that. That's, right? You'd be hard-pressed to find someone in all of Samaria who had felt the weight more than her of what it was to say, the messiness of your life, who you are, there's not space for it. This is probably why she has come out to the well in the middle of the day when all the other women would have been there in the morning. She came out there because she wanted to be by herself, because there was something she was feeling in all those other groups, because 5 times is enough, and she doesn't need to hear it anymore. And for sure, she's not looking to hear it from some Jewish guy who's a rabbi who's going to tell her about what she needs to believe about religion when she's a Samaritan. See? So now I want you to think about those opening lines when John writes this story. And John says, we were down in Judea, and Jesus is like, it's time to go back up to Galilee. And then John says, but Jesus had to go through Samaria. He had to, because this woman was the point. He was compelled. For Jesus, it's because there's a woman who's heard 5 times. There's no place for her. 5 times she's heard, right? I'm not good enough. I'm going to go meet this woman. And for this time, she's going to hear, I see your life and I get 5 husbands, and the man you have right now isn't even your husband. And we don't know if he won't marry her or if she has said, no more marriages. I won't bear the idea that I'll ever hear rejection again, right? We don't know, but what we do know is that Jesus made space for her. And this is the beautiful thing about Jesus, is that he makes space for the messiness of her life. And this is the thing, to view life in this way. Some time ago, we had the pastor team had an all-day meeting off campus, and we were meeting, and we took a lunch break, and we went to a nearby restaurant. And as we were getting close to finishing up our lunch, the waiter came up and just said, "Your bill has been comped." And we're like, "Oh, that's like, really nice." And we didn't know who comped. And we actually asked, and at first they were like, "Well, and we asked again and found out that I think it was the manager of the restaurant. And Ryan actually went over, and we said thank you, and Ryan actually went over and just like, "Listen, like you don't feel like you need to do this, that just because some people from your church come in here, just like you don't need to do this." And what he told Ryan was precious, because there's a backstory to this. The manager of that restaurant was once in our youth group, but before he was a student in our youth group, he was in another church, and his family were like one of those wonderful pillar families, right? He said, like, our family was like, we were the ideal family in the church, and just everything was wonderful and good until it wasn't. And he said, my parents went through a divorce. And he said, you have to know that in our church, right, divorce was one of those things. In fact, if you had a view of the world where the world is bad and ugly, and it's people out there, right, that sin against God, and they will get a divorce, and it was just like talked about in this way. And he said, so when we showed up to the youth group, right, and these are the kids, these are not the parents, these are the kids. It's like no one said anything bad or terrible to us, but we step in and we just become this living example of why the happy, shiny, good thing that they're supposed to be isn't maybe all that it is. And every time we'd show up, we become that iconic thing that just gets in the way of what they're trying to hold on to. And we weren't welcome. And he said this to Ryan, because Ryan was like, no, it's okay. And here's what he said to Ryan. He said, I want to do this because it is my way of saying thank you for being a safe place when there was no other place we could go. And his brothers and sisters started coming to the youth group here. And what they found were other students within the youth group that just gave them a place to be in the messy, painful place that they were in, just trying to navigate what that meant for them. And I think back on that, and I am so glad they found something different. Friends, this is the thing that Jesus modeled. He went out of his way to say, people live in the messy middle. This is where life gets real. And we've got to find a way to live in this tension. And the way we navigate this around here, I want to give you a value that we hold. There's a handful of core values that we hold on to as a church. And I want to just close out my time and talk about this one value that we hold as a church. And here's how we phrase this value. We call it the beautiful mess. It's just the beautiful mess. And it's this idea that in life, there are things that are beautiful and there are things that are a mess. And when you think about the beautiful things, like I think about this, right? And again, like I am typically a really positive kind of guy. It's easy for me to think about us being in a God-bathed world, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. I want you to see that and think that when we look at Scripture, I want you to see that God is in this world and doing good things, and there's reason for great hope and to enjoy life, all of these wonderful things. But if you only hold on to what is beautiful, you know what happens? Marriages break sometimes. Sometimes marriages just break. Sometimes things just don't go the way you want with your kids. Sometimes things just don't go the way you want with your friends. Sometimes you get reports from doctors and they're not good ones. Sometimes Sometimes temptation strikes you and you do things that you regret. It's just, if life has to be beautiful all the time, then you get choked out in some way. Because life gets messy, doesn't it? But here's the other thing. If you just embrace the messy, if you just say, man, life is filled with sin and there's war going on and there's people that don't like me and there's disease and there's death and there's all of these things. If you just live there, right, you can be a pragmatist. But you won't get to experience the beauty of the life that God has. And it can be really hard because there's something that's contradictory about these two. And for us, you know what we've said is like, okay, so be it. Because this is reality. And when I look in Scripture, when I see what Jesus modeled, Jesus just had a way of saying, it's beautiful and it's a mess. And we can just live in this tension. And so for us as a church, we've just said, we're going to make a space where people can just live in the beautiful mess. Because this is what is real in this. So here's my challenge in this. And it starts at a personal level with you. I want you to think about this value of the beautiful mess. Which direction do you tend to lean more? Okay, right? Do you tend to lean more of like, oh man, I cling to the beauty and I hold on to the beauty and like, right? And is there a tendency in you then to just be like, don't tell me about the bad and I want to ignore that and I want to explain, when something bad happens, I just like, oh no, I'm good, right? And so here's what I want to say. If that's you, this week, open up this hand a little bit and make some space for it to be okay that everything's not perfect in your life or maybe in the life of someone around you. Maybe you've been secretly judging yourself, and you won't, just find some grace to let the messy part be the messy part. Maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you're just like, no, I will not be surprised. I will not have my hopes dashed. I will not get my hopes up. I'm gonna look at the worst case scenario and I'll live out of that all of the time, right? Here's what I challenge you with. Open up this hand a little bit. Start asking God to do some beautiful things in your life. Look for some beautiful things and find a way to live in both, okay? That's the first thing. Second thing, as a church, I want you to realize there are so many people around us in our city, in our neighborhoods, and they have been a part of religion, or there's things that they've believed about God, right or wrong, or a church or whatever. But they're in a space where it feels like there is no room for them to be real. Guess what? You will have opportunities to just create a little space for them. Be someone who can live, right, that beautiful mess in front of them. Be the person that just allows them to live in the messy middle and it be okay. Because I promise you, you do that, you are a gift. You are a gift that anybody and everybody needs. Be that gift, friends.